And a good Tuesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Now entering our kind of copy and paste stretch of weather, if you will, where we are going to have daily pop-up rain chances, and some of those rain chances may be coming in the form of a low-end thunderstorm. We'll talk a little bit more about what that specifically means in just a moment. But I did want to tell you we are beginning to wrap up the month of March. In fact, today going to be the last official day of the month. And you can see we are very likely going to end this in the exceptionally dry category. The only way I think we get out of this category is if somehow we get lucky with a thunderstorm over Middle Georgia Regional Airport, and it kind of sits there for a prolonged period of time, and that could dump maybe, I would say probably about at least half an inch of rain. If we get totals up to about an inch or more, then obviously it would continue to maybe make us rise up into the very dry or the dry categories, but I don't anticipate that chance being very likely whatsoever. In fact, I think it is very, very unlikely that specifically does occur. However, not your departure, excuse me, I'm already jumping ahead of myself, but average rainfall for the month of March, just shy of 5 inches. It is one of our wetter months that we do have throughout the calendar year. Total so far, just over 1.5 inches of rainfall. So little to nothing basically in the pot when it does come to your rainfall, and you can see that steady decline. It has now officially been over 2 weeks since we have last recorded rainfall at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, and that's what's put us from the very top of the dry category all the way down now into the bottom half of the exceptionally dry box. So 2026, now March is taking the cake for the driest month we've seen so far. Obviously only a sample size of 3 months. In February, we did talk about that quite a good bit when we did wrap up the month of February. I think we're actually a lot closer to what average officially sat at, because we did have an issue with the sensor one day at Middle Georgia Regional Airport that resulted in maybe about a ½ inch of rain that we did miss in terms of those values, and a ½ inch of rain that would have put us right on average for the month of February. But nonetheless, January about 2 inches below what we typically see on average, and the month of March so far above 2.5 inches below what we normally see on average. So your departure of rain, which you will see on the almanac, that's that number we always talk about with the negative in front of it, 5 inches below average now, and we are going to watch that number, I do imagine, get farther and farther down in that negative category, something we do not necessarily want to see. This is all the data as of yesterday, so going to be as of March 30th. Like I mentioned, going to keep our fingers crossed that we can get something in the way of a pop-up shower at the very least, but a pop-up thunderstorm over Middle Georgia Regional Airport would be very beneficial for some of those numbers, at least getting a significant dent put in them. So afternoon showers and a couple of low-end storms. Rain chances are not looking widespread until we get into the weekend, and we might have one opportunity for some widespread showers at the very least, because our next front is looking to come in on Sunday. But obviously, a lot of your eyes are already ahead on the closing portion of your weekend, as Sunday is going to be Easter. We'll talk about what the long-range models are saying compared to what they did say as of yesterday. Here's a look around the quad, where we're still holding on to our fair share of cloud cover, but we're actually getting some peaks of sunshine through this cloud cover in most areas, with the exception of downtown Dublin, who is holding on to plenty of gray skies, but maybe just some passing clouds right now. I'm sure that as the clouds do continue to pass up in the sky, you will start to get some peaks of sunshine, some peaks of blue sky, like we see up here in Macon, like we can see a little bit down at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. You can see the shadows here of the trees right here by the retention pond, and then off Cohen Walker Drive down there in Warner Robins. Also a mostly sunny atmosphere where you can see the shadows of those trees over on the CGTC campus. Here's a look at your current temperatures. 69 in Macon. That is more reminiscent of the temperature up in Charlotte, but everyone else in the eastern half of the United States already somewhere in the 70s. 77 at the warmest over in Panama City, down in Orlando, another 77 all the way over into Houston, even a 75 up in St. Louis, 73 in Kansas City. You have to go all the way back into Colorado before you spot any sort of blue whatsoever, with a temperature of 40 degrees right now up in Denver. But it does look like a couple of 60s. We're a bit of the outlier when you compare it to areas all across the eastern United States. 68 in Charlotte, 69 in Macon, and then a 68 over in San Angelo are the only numbers below the 70-degree mark, with the exception of Denver that you did see up there in the top left of your screen. So now we take a more localized view of the southeast corner of the United States. Good mix of some light blue or light green, excuse me, some lime green colors, maybe transitioning into some yellow, which is going to indicate those temperatures in the 70s, mid to upper 60s, and some low, mid, maybe even some upper 70s. I think 76 is the warmest number I see here. Jacksonville and getting down to Albany. So pretty warm environment, but it does look like we're a bit cooler than the rest of the bunch here in the Macon area. And it once again is remaining kind of a story of some upper 60s and some low 70s on this temperature map. This is a little bit warmer than what we were sitting at as of yesterday, somewhere down in the lower 60s, even still holding on to some upper 50s in the Macon area. Winds and wind gusts. There is a widespread light breeze, anywhere from around 5 to maybe 8 miles per hour. But I want you to pay attention to the direction of these winds. As long as the winds are coming in from some sort of southerly direction, whether that's the southwest, whether that is dead from the south, or whether that's from the southeast, it is going to continue to pull up some moisture into our forecast, which we do see with widespread light green on this graphic as of now. So your humidity levels, it does look like the widespread light green, the noticeable humidity, is encompassing much of the southeast United States. It's once you get up into the Appalachian Mountains that humidity hasn't quite made it back in the forecast. But also we'll be on the lookout for these patchy areas of dark green that are present over into South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, and all the way down into Louisiana. That is going to be indicating something in the way of a pretty swampy atmosphere. That's where we're talking about dew point temperatures that get up into the 70s, and that's going to indicate even more moisture in the air in those lower levels of the atmosphere, and that will have a role on our daily pop-up shower and storm chances that we do have in focus later on today. Satellite imagery does show that we have clearing in the clouds back over to the west. So if I were to flip a couple of those sky camera lenses around, that's where we would see more peaks of blue sky, I do imagine. The cloud cover is more so present over to the east in areas like Dublin, where we were not getting a glimpse of anything besides some shade that is going to encompass our easternmost half right now. Taking a look at the state of Georgia as a whole, within this cloud cover, a couple of isolated light showers just north of I-20 and north of the Augusta area up into the state line of South Carolina, so really in between the Greenville and Augusta areas, between I-85 and I-20. Otherwise, I don't think I can spot much in the way of rainfall whatsoever. It's just going to be some scattered clouds that are present all across the southeast. I imagine that picture is going to get a bit more active as we head into the afternoon hours because much of the southeast is going to be under a very similar weather setup as we are here in central Georgia. So 77 degrees, that was your high temperature as we kick-started the brand new work week, and the second to last day of the month of March finally climbed back above average. So it's been a very interesting stretch over the last 3 days, to say the least. We will talk about that more in detail once we pop up your calendar graphic, but 57 for a morning low, also getting that number well above average once again, 10 degrees above your average low of 47 degrees, and we are 3 degrees above your average high of 74 degrees. Near the records? Nope, not whatsoever. 89 the record high, 30 the record low. No precipitation recorded. Like I mentioned, your departure of rain is now farther down into that negative category, eclipsing the 5-inch mark. Sunrise yesterday, 7:25, sunset at 7:53. Your sunset is creeping awfully close to that 8 p.m. hour, which it is forecasted to hit, I imagine, probably around this time next week as we go into the second week of the month of April. But before we get into April, we have to wrap up the month of March. And you are going to notice one thing just by looking at this graphic, and that is going to be plenty of those red boxes throughout the calendar. So we have a total now of 20 days throughout the month of March, exactly 2/3 of the month so far. Obviously, with us only recording 30 days as opposed to 31. But it does look like also March 31st going to add the tally up to 21 days above average when it's all said and done. We had 2 days that were sitting right at average. That was back on the 13th. And this past Saturday where we hit a high temperature of 73. So right where we should have been this time of year after the passage of our frontal boundary late last Friday into Saturday morning. And it did result in one below average day as of this past Sunday, but we were very quick to see the numbers warm back up above average, but very thankfully not quite as warm as what we've seen with 88 last Monday afternoon, 85 last Friday afternoon, and I do believe those are probably some of the warmest temperatures. We had 2 consecutive days at the 85-degree mark back on the 10th and back on the 11th. So here's a look at your hour-by-hour temperatures today. Say hello to those 80s. Once again, we will climb throughout the low and the mid-70s as we go into lunchtime in about an hour's time. Continue the climb all the way up into the 80s as a lot of this cloud cover currently present will continue to clear. And then once we get into around 2 to 3 o'clock, I think that's where the warm-up is going to halt, because we are looking at more kind of poofy cumulus clouds that pop up virtually out of nowhere. And within some of those pockets of some cumulus clouds, some of those darker bottoms, that's where we are going to have some shower chances and also maybe even hear a few grumbles of thunder. But all we're seeing on this meteogram is topping out at 82 degrees. I think some areas have the potential to climb to 84 degrees, but given the hit or miss nature of these showers and these low-end storm chances, if you do catch something in the way of rain, it's very likely not only going to halt that warm-up, but it may result in some rain-cooled air. And that could obviously knock the numbers back down in the 70s in some areas that are making that climb up into the lower 80s, but nonetheless a well above average day. Back into the 80s, we have those pop-up rain chances, and the winds will continue to blow out of the south and the southeast around 5 to 15 miles per hour, and that is going to continue to usher in a more humid air mass into the picture. So this is what we see. Starting around 2 to 3 o'clock, they're starting to see a couple of light green bubbles, mainly over to the west. I want to emphasize that point with what we'll see later on this afternoon into the evening with your rain chances. The chances will be far greater over to the west and the southwest here in central Georgia, but also outside of central Georgia as you get closer to the Alabama and the Georgia state line. That's where we also see those pockets of yellow, orange, maybe even some red, indicating just those isolated pockets where the rainfall rates are a little bit heavier. But when we do see heavier rainfall rates, that's also associated with your thunderstorms in turn. So we're not really seeing much coverage of that rain here in central Georgia, but anything that does pop up, it once again remains mainly in our western corridor, mainly west of I-75, but not just limited to those areas. I would say that everyone still here in central Georgia has the potential to see some rain throughout this afternoon into the evening. Latest model run of Future View, not too impressive, but I don't want you to get caught up in maybe one model run showing more widespread coverage than the other. Future View does struggle a whole lot, just like all of our other models, with these pop-up showers and these pop-up thunderstorm chances that are more reminiscent of our rain chances in the summertime frame. So we will go into the nighttime hours. That's when the sun does set. That's when our temperatures begin to get cooler. There's not as much to work with as we would have in the heat of the day right smack dab in the middle of the afternoon. Some scattered clouds to walk out the door tomorrow morning. I wouldn't doubt when it's all end all be all and we walk out the door tomorrow, we could walk out to a pretty gray and gloomy atmosphere, just like we have present as of this morning once again. But going into the afternoon, we will start to see some of these spotty showers bubbling up right there as early as lunchtime. But I think the coverage and the best chance of seeing anything bubble up is going to be more so into the middle of the afternoon, 2, 3, 4 o'clock, and then continuing on into the evening hours around 5 to 6 p.m. I would plan on each afternoon and evening at least having the chance of rain, but we'll talk about the likelihood that you actually have of seeing something in the way of rain. But the farther into the evening that you head, that's when we are going to also have the potential for maybe a rumble of thunder or two. Not forecasting anything in the way of severe weather. It does just look like we might have some pockets of some heavy rain that are going to be suitable for producing a low-end thunderstorm. Nothing besides maybe a couple of gusty winds and a few rumbles of thunder, but we're not forecasting anything in the way of hail per se, or we're not forecasting anything in the way of spin-up tornado activity like we have been talking about as of, I guess, about 2 weeks ago now. It's been a very calm stretch of weather recently, which we have been thankful for after all those tornadoes that did touch down in a matter of about 5 days. So now we go into Wednesday evening, more so the nighttime hours. All of the activity in the way of rain is fizzling out. And then we go into the end of the midweek on Thursday. Relatively clear start to the day, but I do think Thursday afternoon into the evening, that's probably going to have the lowest chance of rain. And that is just really kind of looking to be because we're not going to get the proper fetch of moisture. We might not have as humid of an environment. So when you don't have one of those parameters, the humidity or the warmer temperatures, which we are looking to keep the warmer temperatures in the forecast on Thursday, it does look like we might have a little bit less humidity in the cards on Thursday afternoon into the evening to work with. So that's why we don't really see much in the way of impressive rain chances. I've elected to give Thursday afternoon and evening a bit of a downtick when it does come to those chances for some rain. But I did mention isolated, scattered. I mentioned this all morning long. I don't know if I've said it really in the stream, just been kind of trying to cover the bases and show you what to expect each afternoon and evening and where the locations of that rain will be greater. Well, this graphic does a great job of reiterating that as well. West and southwest central Georgia, the best likelihood of receiving rain over the next 3 days. And notice that we aren't going to see these green shades all over the area. We are going to see some dry areas, some areas that don't see rain whatsoever, indicating the isolated and the scattered nature of this. So it's a low likelihood of seeing anything in the way of rain, but if you do get lucky, especially and catch a thunderstorm, and I say lucky because you might add about a ½ inch, maybe even getting close to about 1 inch of some rainfall in some isolated spots. The total in Macon, according to the last model run, actually popped up to 1.3 inches of rain over the course of the next 3 days. Now, this doesn't just mean that Sparta is going to get exactly 0.4 of an inch of rain. Unadilla is going to get 0.7 of an inch of rain. Butler going to get a ½ inch of rain. That means that some areas in central Georgia have the potential to see some totals around that threshold, but most areas are very likely going to record a trace, maybe about 1/10 of an inch, or nothing whatsoever, especially east central Georgia. And that's obviously not what you want to see. I would really love to see some substantial rainfall amounts down in southeast central Georgia, where some of those highest drought conditions do exist. But we will take anything that Mother Nature does deal us in terms of those cards. So the next 3 days, it is going to act like a summertime forecast, at least your rain chances, but your temperatures are just going to be more so in the category of some spring warmth. They are going to be well above average for this time of year, but as we go into April and as we get into the beginning of May, temperatures in the 80s are going to become more of the normal, and that's going to be smack dab in the middle of the spring season. So 84, 85, and then another 85 for a high temperature throughout the midweek. Your morning low temperatures also unvarying, somewhere in the upper half of the 50s, even starting out pretty close to that 60-degree mark as you go into Thursday morning. Not much fluctuation. Virtually every morning and every afternoon is feeling the same, but I do want you to be prepared for the worst, which would be maybe a thunderstorm coming over wherever you are for any outdoor activities in the afternoon into the evening, or just any evening kind of day-to-day routine that you are getting into. Maybe running some errands after you get off of work, maybe heading out to the gym and you're walking out of the gym. You don't want to get caught in one of these rain showers whatsoever. Just have the rain jacket ready to go like we always tell you during June, during July, during August here in central Georgia. That's going to be a very similar forecast to what we have for the next 3 days, but slightly less impressive rain chances as we go into your Thursday afternoon compared to what we have today and into your Wednesday tomorrow. So no April Fool's jokes whatsoever. Hopefully we will finally give you some much needed rainfall, at least with one of those isolated showers or some storms, because that is going to kind of be the beginning of our rain chances, and we are going to have more opportunities to add on to whatever totals you do see over the course of the next 2 days more so. So first things first, let's talk about the specific values that you do need to know, and that is going to be number one, the winds and the wind gusts, where we just continue to see this steady stream of something in the way of a southerly component to your winds. It's mainly coming in the form of a nightly sea breeze that does move in off the Atlantic coast, but we can also see this cluster of some yellow, maybe some isolated pockets of red over to the west of us. That's going to be within maybe something in the way of some showers and thunderstorms that are trying to semi-organize, mainly to the west of us as we go into tomorrow afternoon and more so the evening hours. But I do think by Thursday afternoon, we do see a widespread light breeze built back in the forecast, and that's going to kind of be a sign of things to come because we go into your Thursday evening, maybe even some gusts up to 20 to 22 miles per hour. And then as we go into the end of the weekend, Easter Sunday specifically, I am forecasting the winds to get a bit gustier in nature. But if you need some, say, evening plans for this Tuesday, Mercer back in town after hitting the West Coast against the Oregon State Beavers this past weekend. A long trip over to Corvallis, but the Bears are back here in Macon, and they are taking on the Kennesaw State Owls, a team that knocked off my Georgia Bulldogs last Tuesday. So, of course, this is looking to be a very good game. Mercer is still having a very good year, even after the sweep at Oregon State last weekend. Oregon State is also one of the top teams in the country. You might have a possible shower around first pitch right there at the 6 p.m. hour, but as you progress farther into the game, into those middle innings, into those closing innings, that's where we are going to start to see, number one, cooler temperatures because the sunset's going to be somewhere around, I imagine, 7:53 p.m. I forgot to change that sunset time, so a little bit later than what you do see labeled right here, but sometime around the middle innings of the game. But when the temperatures do get cooler, your rain chances are going to get less and less as we go into this evening. And there's still a good likelihood that you can head out to Ortho Georgia Park and not catch anything in the way of rain. It is going to be a textbook spring afternoon, going to feel mighty comfortable, especially as you get into those closing innings. Not really feeling a chill in the air whatsoever until, I would say, probably closer to midnight once those numbers are getting back down into the lower 60s, but they don't even look to get out of the 70s by the time that we're wrapping up this midweek game against the KSU Owls. So here's a look at the long-range models. As we go into Friday morning, we could actually keep our fair share of some showers in the forecast for the morning hours. Again, we'll get a better idea of that once this does pop up on our short-range future view. And I'm going to continue to say that because these long-range models, they don't have the best resolution. One has better resolution than the other, and that would be the European as opposed to the GFS. But what I mean by that resolution is we're not able to necessarily get a localized image of where those rain chances are popping up, like short-range future view would show you with the graph model. The graph model shows us, hey, maybe east central Georgia has the best chance of widespread rain chances as opposed to west. But the long-range models just kind of show you the general potential that we do have for some rain, and it does look like that we have a fairly decent chance as we go into your Friday afternoon and evening. So that's what I would be on the lookout for. Maybe not the best start to your weekend plans, but that's why I was continuing to tell you over the past 2 weekends to soak up that nice and dry weather while it did last, because typically during the springtime, you can get into some stretches that are more reminiscent of the summertime, where I'm going to tell you to keep the rain jacket handy quite often in these warmer months of the year. So Friday, like I mentioned, maybe not the best start to the weekend, but we will continue to watch those shower chances or maybe even some storm chances fizzle out as we go overnight into Saturday morning. Saturday has looked pretty good according to the long-range models. Now, future view, once we get that within view, might say the exact opposite. I'm still maintaining a decent rain chance as we go into Saturday, at least more reminiscent of what we do see on Friday, just to cover some fluctuation, because I feel like the models have definitely gone back and forth the most frequently in terms of what your Saturday afternoon is looking like. But according to this, as of right now, I would recommend maybe making some of those outdoor plans this weekend on Saturday afternoon, and the earlier will be better each and every day. If you can make those plans, say around 11 a.m., 12, getting into the hours just past lunchtime, that's when the chance of rain is going to be a lot less likely, when the temperatures aren't quite at their warmest each and every afternoon just yet. So now going into Saturday evening, you will see the widespread rain chances over to the west and to the northwest of us. Even some severe weather potential that does look to be available over in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, even back over into western Kentucky and Tennessee. Well, that's a frontal boundary making its way down here into the southeast United States. But then we transition from Saturday into Sunday. And Sunday, obviously, going to be Easter Sunday. So here's 10 a.m. And this is a rough estimate on the timing. Typically, I'll go ahead and tell you that we do have a little bit of a disclaimer with this, because I typically notice that on the long range or on the short range and on the higher resolution models, our frontal boundaries are a little bit quicker to arrive as opposed to what the long range models do say. This doesn't always happen, but I would say it's a trend more often than not. So that is something to keep in the back of your head. But this is 10 a.m. and it still looks like a mostly cloudy atmosphere over central Georgia, but we do see some rain creeping closer and closer. And this would come right in the middle of the afternoon as we go into Sunday if that frontal boundary is to pass through. So once again, the earlier the better for any plans that you do have on Sunday. Maybe you have plans to have an outdoor lunch with friends and family on Easter Sunday. I would recommend going to an earlier church service and maybe getting an early start, more so a brunch to those lunch plans, as opposed to maybe a dinner where typically you would have some lunch later in the afternoon into the evening hours. That's not looking to be the best atmosphere to at least be outside, or at least make a plan to have those lunch or dinner plans, I guess, rather I should say, into the or indoors as opposed to having those outdoors. But that frontal boundary really doesn't look to hold together too well as we go all the way into Sunday evening into Monday morning. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it just doesn't have a lot of forcing. It doesn't have all the parameters that it really needs to sprout widespread showers and thunderstorms like it will do out to the west. We're not seeing anything that is implicating anything in the way of severe weather, but this would be the one system that could produce more widespread rain chances than those pop-up showers and storms that we are going to see on a daily basis all the way into the beginning of the weekend. But after this front passes, I think we'll hold on to some cloud cover for a little bit. It does appear that maybe some portion of this front might try to stall down to the south of us into Florida, and that will continue to create some rain chances down there on the peninsula just off the Atlantic coast. But I don't have too much confidence in our rain chances continuing into the beginning of next week. But if this front is to hold together, here's a look at how much rainfall that we could expect here in central Georgia. I would expect maybe around a ½ inch over the course of the next week across the majority of the area, but some areas maybe not even getting that high. And some isolated pockets, once again, might get lucky and might get some totals, say, up to about an inch, maybe even an inch and a half. That's according to the European model, which has a bit of better resolution, like I mentioned, as opposed to the GFS, which is more of kind of just a general idea, also hinting at kind of the same total range, about 1/4 inch all the way to about a ½ inch of rainfall, maybe some isolated pockets that get a little bit higher than those values. So your humidity will fluctuate just a little bit, like we were mentioning on Thursday. A slight downtick, that can make all the difference with our forecast, with maybe only about a 10% chance of a sprinkle, as opposed to a 20 to a 30% chance of a pop-up shower or a pop-up storm into the afternoon. We get another increase as we go into Friday. That's lining up with what the long-range models were saying. And then maybe we get another downtick into Saturday, into Sunday. So it does appear that maybe towards the back half of the weekend, we just don't have as much moisture to work with as we do on days like Friday, as we do on days like today and into tomorrow. But then going Sunday into Monday, that's where we see the steep drop off, courtesy of that frontal boundary arriving. So it may be like the last couple that we've talked about, not going to send us much in the way of impressive rain chances, but it is going to have an impact with some cooler and with some drier air filtering in behind it. But we do have kind of a sight of that cool down on your 7-day forecast, which we'll show you in just a moment. First things first, until we get there, no changes with your afternoon high temperatures, going to be in the neighborhood of around 10 degrees above average each and every day. That's only if you don't get something in the way of a shower or maybe even a storm early in the afternoon that could result in the halting of that warm up, or also some rain cooled air that could keep the numbers down a little bit lower, say in the 70s. Morning low temperatures, upper 50s and low 60s, more so right around the 60-degree mark, but also once again in the neighborhood of around 10 degrees above average of your morning low. Right now that should be around 48 degrees each and every morning. So here's a look at your early Easter forecast with both those model runs that I did just show you. The GFS not holding this frontal boundary together as well as the European is, but the GFS is also trailing out a little bit ahead. I grabbed these snapshots from the pause point of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it still doesn't look like anything terribly impressive here across the state of Georgia, but semi-organized according to the Euro. GFS is hitting at more so a broken line. I'm more inclined to kind of believe what the European does say, just from recent history and just kind of knowledge forecasting. The European is more on the money as opposed to the GFS, but not to say that the GFS is completely wrong, and it is wrong this time. The main thing that you need to know is, number one, we are going to fine-tune this as we get closer, so you need to definitely make sure you're keeping an eye on any Easter Sunday plans, especially if they are outdoors. And number two, we do know for certainty where kind of your temperatures are going to be, and I would say near 80 degrees for a high temperature, and your morning lows on Easter morning going to start out somewhere in the lower 60s. So still going to continue the very pleasant feel each and every day that we do have. But the earlier the better for any of those Easter Sunday plans as you do have right now. And then after that front does drive through, say hello to the 70s once again, which is crazy to think 71 degrees going to be below average as we go into the beginning of next week. I'm still holding on to about a 20% chance of rain during the morning hours, but it also brings me to my next point. All your rain chances are going to kind of be written in pencil each of the next couple of days. 20% is kind of a general idea. We could see those uptick to maybe a 30 or a 40%, specifically on maybe days like Friday, where we are seeing more moisture in the forecast. But overall, you still have a greater likelihood of not seeing rain as opposed to seeing a pop-up shower or a storm each and every afternoon and into the evening hours. But I would still say that Sunday is the best day for seeing something in the way of at least rainfall, because we have a driving force and something that is leading to more organized rain chances as opposed to the no rhyme or reason of these popcorn showers and storms that we see just operating off the heat of the day. And then as we go into the beginning of next week, I am forecasting some fairly dry weather. We'll have an extended stretch of the 70s that actually looks to take us into the end of next week. And I think hopefully that will be a lot more of a suitable forecast for some outdoor plans, because the 80s, while we have gotten pretty used to them, it is a little bit too warm for this time of year, around 10 degrees above average. So hopefully we'll get the numbers back closer to where they should be as we kickstart the beginning of next week on Easter Monday. So that's where things stand as of right now. A lot that's going to and a lot that will continue to change. Make sure that you are continuing to stay updated as we fine-tune your forecast as we get closer to the weekend ahead. And we'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. to do just that.